Welcome to the Greg Lancaster Show. We're so glad that you're watching us today. We're pumped about having the second part of Super Chicken. We're looking at the Super Chicken study that was talked about, the famous talk at the TED Talk, and about the American church. We're finding out some very interesting things. Of course, joining me is going to be Pat Hamilton and Steve Kaliszewski. We had such an exciting time last time. I look forward to talking with you. Stay tuned after this intro. Oh my goodness. Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Hey, what's happening?
Steve.
What's happening, guys?
What's happening?
How's it going?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Pat?
Doing very well, very well. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. So,
Good.
I can't believe that, that you came up with this idea of Super Chicken, in the American church, Pat, that
Yeah.
I was, fear and trembling. I'm looking at this, and understanding that obviously we're not talking about the church. We're talking
Right.
about a study done with chickens. And there were some super producers or whatever in there. They called super chickens. We'll talk about that in a minute with Margaret, Heffernan. But hey, how has your day gone, Steve? Talk to us.
Action packed.
Okay.
Pretty steady. Lots to do.
So you're going steady. What happened? What? Your
Your
day was steady?
Day was steady.
Day was steady. People don't know that, by day you're a reporter, a mortgage reporter, I guess you would say. And by night you're super chicken.
Yes.
And that's amazing, isn't it? That's one of the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
Both work in the financial district, and
Mhm.
it's amazing that we're watching the economy do something pretty interesting.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so I was thinking about, we're going to obviously talk about the super chicken in a minute, but I want to ask you this question because I know it's just going to be so profound before we start anything. Pat, can you talk to us and share with us? Take about 15, 20 minutes just to share your heart. It's just going to change everything as we know it as we enter into the Super Chicken 2.0. Thank you. That was good. That was great.
All right, can you be more specific?
Steve's like leaning forward in anticipation. That was
All right.
deep. That was
I
good.
want to hear that one too. Yeah, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Right. He's the technical man on behalf of all this. Obviously, we did think that we thought Steve knew more than he did. We would, never mind. So, anyway, so here we are. We're here talking about the 2.0 Super Chicken. If you missed us last week, we're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, Mountain, Pacific, whatever time. I know that Robert out in California, big shout out to you guys. We love hearing from you. Don't forget to chat with us. We're set up to be able to talk to you on all the different platforms that we're out there. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. What are we on, Pat?
Instagram,
YouTube.
Rumble, Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah, our Canadian channel. We just launched a Canadian channel, Rumble, with free speech out there. So if you have a moment, go to rumble.com. You see our lower third on the screen, I think, for Rumble. You can go there and connect to us, and let's kick that channel off like we did the other ones. I'm excited about our free speech platform. Imagine what we could say on Rumble that we can't say here. So the Super Chicken study, let me set this whole thing up, unless you have more to add to that, Pat. I don't know. I don't want to.
I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Steve's
I
enjoying
got
that.
20 minutes for you to fill out.
Steve, you want to jump in,
Get
brother?
into
Yeah,
that.
right.
Help me out, brother.
This is a powerful talk, isn't it, about the Super Chicken? I mean,
Yeah, it's very good. It's good stuff.
so Margaret Heffernan.
Heffernan?
Yes, Heffernan, that's her. She actually was doing this TED Talk. It's been nicknamed the Super Chicken Talk. But she's talking about corporate studies and how to be be more productive. And of course, why in the world would we be talking about corporate studies when we are talking about the church. I think that John Fenn, or is it John Fenn? I think it is. What is? Yeah, it is John Fenn. John Fenn said specifically how the church started in Jerusalem and it kind of worked its way to America and became something different than it was when it first started. Listen to what John said.
Christianity started as a relationship in Israel when God came to man. It went to Greece to become a philosophy, to Rome to become a religion, to Europe to become a tradition and part of the culture, and then to America to become an enterprise.
So you're looking at, think about this. That's a power. I know it's fast, but he's saying like the church started obviously with God coming to spend time with us, send his son Jesus, God with us, Emmanuel. And it was a relationship. People are eating with God. People are drinking with God. People are being healed, hanging out, spending time together, getting to know the Father through the Son. It's just a powerful encounter. And then he says it goes to Greece and somehow it turns into a philosophy. And then it goes to Rome and it gets turned into a religion. That's where, Rome used it. And then it goes to Europe and becomes a tradition. It kind of like blends it all together. You come out with the pulpit Bible and the different things that happened there with King James and all that stuff. And then it comes to America and then eventually became an enterprise. And what we're looking at the study of corporations and the study, and we're finding out, my goodness, it's like we have to actually go backwards and look now because corporations are finding out if we want to be fruitful. I'm going to get this. Think about this, Steve. People who want to make money understand that they have to be fruitful. They have to make more of their widgets and products and provide a better service, right? And so they're realizing that we have to be relational. Yeah. These are like corporations, man. These are like, boardrooms and bottom dollar, and they're actually understanding
what the church had.
Yes. Yeah. And
we value relationships, and while the church is valuing business.
Yeah. And we got to get back to getting away from the big super chicken model and get back to the relational model. And so what William Muir did, the study that she was talking about in the part when we started talking about it, he's a biologist. He was studying some dysfunction and waste and how to be more productive. So he decided to use chickens. The reason why you use chickens, because you can count productivity by how many eggs they lay. So more eggs means more productivity. And so they looked at all these chickens in this chicken study, and they looked for the big producers, big producers. And they took the big producers and they separated them from the other general chickens. And not general chickens restaurant. It was so like, I like that. It's so good. It's not general chicken good. Oh my goodness. It's back on the topic. And so, and so you had these common chickens, that were hanging out with each other. And then you had and so they called the chickens that were super producers, they just called them super chickens. Called them super chickens. So these are the super producers. And so they let them go for like 6 generations. They come back and they realize that all but 3 of the super chickens were dead because they pecked themselves to death. And they only grew by repressing the production of someone else. And so that didn't work out too well. Their production dropped. But they went to the other common chickens who were just hanging out. And yeah, they don't quack. That's a duck. What do chickens do? You know what chickens do?
Cluck.
That was good, dude. That was good, Pat. That was great. And so they were doing that, and somehow some eggs happened. I can't tell you all that. Pat can explain that later on. And so, but they came back and they had more chicken, they had more eggs, and they were doing real good. So you had the super chickens, they compete against each other, and how they actually became a quote super chicken is because they would dominate everybody and they would repress the production of others. And
the other chickens.
Yeah, they would do that. So that the way they had more, they would take what you had, basically. And so we're talking about how that model is just prominent. We're looking right now in America that we're battling the big tech, big corporation super chickens that are literally just coming apparently after America, and it's the corporate boardroom that's doing this kind of stuff, and it's just dominating We're battling corporations, but you think about it, and if anybody's in it, your understanding is like, wow, this is pretty intimidating. This is like, I don't feel loving anything. I don't feel loving this super corporate chicken stuff. And so then you look at what we're looking at. Well, has the church in America taken on the same corporate standards, like, the super chickens in the American church, right? And so it kind of looks like that. The things that God values, Jesus says a good shepherd leaves the 99 to go after the one. And a super chicken says, let that one go because we got the 99. And it's not concerned about that because it thinks, that mindset thinks that they built it. They have to hold it together, and that they don't understand that we're individuals who Christ died for, and every one of us is important. And if we socialize and love each other and honor God in that, then that's a productive model. Well, what we called, they called in the study when Margaret's talking about it, she called it social capital. That when you actually allow your company to begin to relate to each other, then that's social capital. We would call that in the church, we just call it relationship. But listen to what she says about how focusing on allowing, not taking the super chicken model, but taking the common chicken model. We talked about an MIT study in the last program. You can catch it later on. But it just shows who was most productive. And they have the ability to socialize and talk, and everybody participates, and everybody has a fair opportunity to be able to cooperate, and they produce more. That's what they found on the MIT study. But listen as she talks about, we put all these things together that she talked about in the study and found out that social capital is built. And capital is something you can spend. Listen to Margaret now.
Now, when you put all of this together, what you get is something called social capital. Social capital is the reliance and interdependency that builds trust. The term comes from sociologists who were studying communities that prove particularly resilient in times of stress. Social capital is what gives companies momentum, and social capital is what makes companies robust.
Wow, so social capital makes companies robust, but robust means you can go through a lot of difficulty and a lot of trials. Jesus said, in this life, you're going to have storms, you're going to have trials. Maybe you're going through one right now. And he says, but cheer up, I've overcome this life. But he's called us to walk in community. He's called us to walk in a place that you build social capital that you could spend at a time like that which comes through that is reliance and dependency and trust. I think about that, when Paul was writing to the church of Corinth. I mean, look what he says right here in the NIV Bible. You can see that. Let's see. We got. I think it's verse 4. Yeah, 4. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. That's what it is. It needs to go to 13, Chris. You go to 13 and come back to us. So he's talking about 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4 through 15. And so you're looking at, that the social capital, what we have, it's called love. I mean, you're looking at just love when we come together. I'll pull this thing out so we can have it here. Okay, there we go. Pull it up. Go ahead and pull that up. And so obviously we're not talking about corporate social capital. We're talking about capital. Capital is something you could spend. It's something that you could spend, and you have that when you build a relationship. Something can come down, some tragedy happens, something difficult happens. And when that happens, you need something to be able to sustain you. Like if a hurricane hits or a tornado hits, you need insurance. And capital is something that you can spend. And they find out in corporate models, when you have relationships, you have that, when you know each other, you have capital you could spend. Guess what? The church, we need to have capital in the church. But sometimes we arrive as strangers, we leave as strangers, we talk about the event, but there's no connectivity. There's no connectivity. So he says as you can see right here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4, he says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud, It doesn't dishonor. These are all things that we do with each other. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, like a coworker. Something happens to a coworker, you don't rejoice that evil happened to them, but it rejoices in the truth. Let's just look at the truth here. It always protects. It always trusts, and it always perseveres. But look back up at verse 1. He says, if I do all this work, if I speak in tongues of men and angels, but I don't have love, I don't have social capital, right? If I don't have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and how many people call themselves prophets today? I'm a prophet. You know, I'm a prophet, you know, prophecy, and I can fathom all the mysteries and all the knowledge. But if I if I have faith that can move mountains, but I don't have love, I'm nothing. And if I give all my stuff, all my possessions to the poor, and give my body over to hardship, in one verse says the flames, and then he says, but if I don't have love, he says that I'm nothing. And so you're looking at what the corporation's finding out in this study, productivity that they took and ran with it, by the way, the corporations ran with this, that the church needs to do that. We need to do that. They're borrowing from how God created us, that when we come together and we build relationships with each other with Christ in the center of it, we're very productive. Mm-hmm. I mean, so many things. Isn't it amazing what, you know, God does when you think about this, Steve, right?
I think it's powerful. Like she's talking about the fact that those corporations that focus on social capital, that study found that they're particularly resilient in times of stress. And hearing her say that, it's almost just like we understand that anytime that a construction company builds a foundation, they put that rebar to hold it together, because they know times of shaking are going to come.
Yes.
And like you're talking about before, what you shared in our last conversation was the fact that if we're going somewhere and all we have is individualism, there's no relationship, and then all of a sudden we're shocked when somebody who's going through something just does something tragic because they themselves never had a relationship. And it reminds me of the fact that it takes time to build relationship. It takes time to build those relationships with those people around us, because it's not a question of, you know, if those hard times are going to come, but it's a question of when. And if
she says that in the study, we'll talk about that. She says they're going to happen. These are you're going to happen. Obviously, if you don't do anything, you know, if all you do is just, you're not going to obey the Great Commission, you're not going to, you know, do anything. You're just going to, might as well be a Rotary Club or something. Nothing against Rotary Clubs, but we're talking about the church. But if you're really going to do the Great Commission, if you're going to do what God tells you to do, it's going to be difficult. I mean, you still have some stuff, but this is what I mean, you know, when you have to produce, right? That's what he says. Absolutely. He says to be fruitful. We do. In our first part of this, we talked about, read from John chapter 15. He says, you didn't choose me. I chose you and appointed you to go and be fruitful, not to be a super chicken. A lot of times we just think, I'm just going to take this and do this myself. But it's us hanging out. It's us doing right now. You have all of us talking to you right now. We're talking to you. We're together talking to you. This is an us thing. You know, this is us, right?
That's it.
So, but it's a benefit though. Isn't it powerful to have, you know, I could imagine doing this without a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I think too, what's also so important too, is that business has such a, you know, it's all about me succeeding. And I was thinking about, you know, you and I were talking not too long ago, and it was just like having that awareness of, you know, Jesus left the production, left the 99 to focus on one. And it's just like redefining, how do you define success? How do you define winning? And I was even thinking about, you know, what you shared a while ago, is the fact of, there was a story of a father and a son, and a father who had a disabled son in a wheelchair, basically. Team Holt. He ran a triathlon. And if people who aren't familiar with what a triathlon is, it's like a really long marathon, but first you swim, then you bike, and then you run.
Pat does that every weekend.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
He did
allegedly.
In a former life.
But what was so awesome was when all the cameras are focusing on these star performers and these, you know, elite athletes finishing this race in a couple hours, you know, the sun has already set, most of the crowd has gone, but there's this father pushing his son and he's one of the last ones there. And it was just that moment, because that was a race his son always wanted to do, but his father was there. And it was just, it captures so much of the heart, because it's just like, when you lay your life down to help someone get across that finish line, even if it takes you 3 times as longer, Jesus sees that. And it's just like, that is what it's all about.
Yeah, you can see that. We'll put a link below to see Team Holt, but you also go to the Torch and type in Team Holt. You got to see it's so emotional because he won the hearts of the world, because he did what was most important. He did the race. He did not do the race, but he did it with someone that couldn't run as fast as everyone else. As a matter of fact, he couldn't run at all. It was his son, but he went to go through the water, right? You do it like a run, then a water, swim, and then a bike or something like that.
Yep.
And it's just so moving. And so like you said, we have to redefine success. They're finding out with this study of the super chicken, for example, that you're actually more productive when you think that way, when you think about other people, and you last. There's something about, there's super chickens, superstars, and shooting stars. Shooting stars are amazing, but they're so quick. They burn so bright, they move so fast that you may have noticed it for a second, but then it's over and then you're on to something different. And there's just a lot of these super chickens are like, they're very, what they would say, like a business model. They do some big things, but where are they? Where are the super chickens? And so that's so good. Yeah, Team Holt is just remeasuring that. And I want to encourage you that as we're talking about the church and looking at this corporate study and how, John Finn talks about how the church has ended up being an enterprise instead of a relationship, that it's just so rewarding. It's so rewarding. God calls himself our Father. Of all the titles he could have chose, he chose Father. And he sent his Son, his one and only Son, and that whoever believes in him will be forgiven, but brought into the family of God. And we're sisters and brothers and mothers and fathers in the Lord. And it's like, when did we become a giving unit? I mean, when did we become super chickens in this whole thing? And right now, there's so many people in America and in the world, they're just suffering from Great Depression. They're ready to burn the whole system down because the system is like a super chicken system. They have no value in it. And God's saying to you right now, listen, you have value. Things are going to turn back to the way God intended them. It's just going to be a moment, but you can get involved. We'll be talking about some things over the program. But as she brings things together here, she talks about, what does this mean in practical terms? Okay, fine. That you got this social capital going. Let's put this whole process of building relationships, getting to know each other over a period of time, and listen to what Margaret talks about, putting it into practical terms.
What does this mean in practical terms? It means that time is everything, because social capital compounds with time. So teams that work together longer get better, because it takes time. What does this mean in practical terms? It means that time is everything, because social capital compounds with time. So teams that work together longer get better, because it takes time to develop the trust you need for real candor and openness. And time is what builds value.
Time is what builds value. This is so important. You can't just klep this thing called life. You can't just I'm going to barge in, and you have these people that are I guess you call them church hoppers. They're trying to find the party, and they're trying to go to the next big thing happening. They chase after the latest whatever. But it takes time to build a relationship. Mm-hmm. It takes time, to be able to have a family and to teach them things. And she says time is everything, but God says time is everything. I mean, think about the whole scale that he's given us. We live within time. We have a beginning, we have an end. God doesn't, but he created us to be able to live within time and accomplish, what he's called us to do. I mean, think about that. When you think about Dr. Epps, right, Steve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that even thinks of, when he says Dr. Epps, he's the author of a book that was called How Not to Fall in Love with a Jerk. And in this, he talks about the importance of how it takes time to build relationships, how it takes time to build intimacy. And to think about that, what she's talking about, and the fact that, teams that work together longer get better because it takes time to develop trust. And it's interesting, even as she was saying that, it brings me to recall all those people that took time to teach me something, all those people that took time to stop what they were doing to pour into me. And it's amazing that difference between a business and a relationship. If you're so focused on what you can quote unquote purchase, it's interesting that no matter how much money you can make, something that is so valuable is your time. And people see that when you're willing to stop what it is that you're doing to pour into someone who's next to you, even the people that the world doesn't see. If you think about it, Jesus didn't come for the healthy. He came for the sick. It wasn't the religious people that loved Jesus. It was the people that the world looked past.
Steve, it's really important to talk about this at this point, because it can seem like a task to someone when you're saying that, versus the fact of going, you're going to be more productive. Your life's going to be more fulfilled. If you stop and smell the roses, if you stop to build a relationship with somebody, it's actually, your life's going to be more meaningful. You're going to make it.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to make it. So it can almost, when you hear these things, it's like people think, it sounds like another product or approach or some church growth concept. It's like, no. It's literally about how you're designed. When I think about the equation in his book, it's Dr. John Epps. He's a counselor of psychology. He's a PhD with Pennsylvania State University. Just did some pretty amazing studies, and he happened to put them in the book that Steve talked about. But these studies stand outside themselves about how you can actually have a meaningful relationship with somebody. And what he said was, look at this equation that he had in his book. He said intimacy, which would be, knowing somebody more intimately, equals T plus T plus T. Now, what was the T plus T plus T? Do you know what that T plus T was? Did you know what it was? What was it?
It was time, basically, that you're spending time with somebody. It's over a long period of time. There is no such thing as a microwave relationship. And then you have togetherness. You're actually spending time together versus in isolation.
Yeah.
But then also too, is that you're talking. You're not just having those, everybody can recall those surface level relationships that you have, but every time you see them, you're like, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? Good.
Right.
Good to see you.
Right.
All right, Bob, talk to you later. And it's just the kiddie pool depth conversations. But when you have those togetherness, when you have those talking, when you have time and you're actually getting into the nitty gritty, what Pat shared, our last conversation, you have people in your life that you live life together, that up and down, that you're for each other. They're for you and you're for them. And over a long period of time, it's amazing the depth and the strength that you have with one another. It's like a bond of rebar that the longer you spend time together, it's just like, someone once said to me too, that it's just like, if you watch a tree when it's little, you would think that when it's going through a storm, if we would listen to a tree, it would say, get me out of here. Right. But it's interesting how the storm is what actually strengthens the very roots of that tree. And it's just like when we have relationships with people, it's interesting that when we have those bonds over a long period of time through stress or through whichever, but we're sticking together,
right?
You can't break those bonds.
I mean, think about God wants a relationship with us.
Yeah.
Right. So this is what he chose to do. He chose to have us walk in this life that has trials in it, and us to stay close to him and close to each other, the church, as we do it. And in that, this is something that he created, just grows into something that he wants to live with for eternity.
Yeah.
That's how awesome this whole thing is. I look at, also he said, when you think about when you're spending that time with each other and you're talking, it's a relationship, what it is, but people don't really know what relationship is. He talks about in his book, he talks about intimacy. Intimacy, the talking part is about mutual self-disclosure. You're not just listening to somebody, talk about their life and go like, I know everything now. You're talking about your life. Self-disclosure. Then togetherness, where you're actually in different environments and you're seeing things happen in diverse experiences, and togetherness, you're seeing that take place. And then it takes time over time, those things happening. And so a lot of people, Steve, will just sit here and just, listen to someone talk, or they'll talk at someone. Remember the lady who gets on the plane, with Dr. Epps, and he just sits down on the plane, and all of a sudden she just starts, and she says, "Oh, I have these kids and these different things like this, and let me show you the pictures." And she pulls all these pictures out, and the whole flight, she just tells her whole life, and then in the very end, she says, "It was so good getting to know you. It was so good getting to know you."
He hadn't said a word.
Right. And I think he says something like, she said,
She gave him a big hug.
Yeah. And then something like she said, "I wish my other 5 husbands would listen to me like that." And she's talking about failed past relationships. It's like, I don't know why. I don't know why they failed.
Yeah.
But people will just talk at someone or just listen, but they don't have any mutual self-disclosure. And part of knowing someone is you got to tell them something. You got to share part of you, and you can't trust someone without knowing something about them. And so often, as we know, this happens quite often, that people just automatically say things to people and they assume they can trust them, and they get brokenhearted because they find out they didn't spend time to get to know them first. Because before someone can trust someone, you have to let them know a little something and see if you can trust them with that.
Yeah.
And then, as he talks about in his book, Dr. Epps, he says, once you get to that point, then now you can rely on them once you can trust them. But you can't trust somebody who doesn't know anything about you. You can't just measure and rub your chin like, I could trust that person. You only know if you can trust them if you can trust them. So you have to share a part of you to that. And that's what happens when we come together as the church in a family context, and we're eating together, we're loving God, we're worshiping God, we're sharing our testimonies. I mean, when we come together as a church, it's like nonstop power. God's moving and miracles are happening, and and then somebody's down, we're there for the person. But it's just amazing. It's just so beautiful. We've been together. We did this particular experiment last time we were together, because we're learning about, and you can see this whole series called, God's Secret Wisdom, Discerning the Thoughts of God, on BindFellowshipNetwork.org. Click on the media there, but it's awesome. And, the only way that you're going to know God's voice if you spend time with him. The only way you're going to know other people's voice if you spend time with them. Like you said, time over a period of time, spending time with them. And so we had, everybody closed their eyes, and we had, I was going to touch somebody and said, you're going to say something and see if anybody can recognize your voice. And as soon as I touch Patrick, I just barely touched Patrick starts laughing. Not Pat, but Patrick. And he just laughed, and everybody knew his laugh, right? And so I'm like, oh my goodness. So I went try to find somebody else, and so I touched Renee. When I touched Renee, first thing she started laughing, and everybody knew people's laughs. Do you know anybody's laughs? Do you know people other than the people that you grew up with in your household? Do you know their laugh? Is there anybody in the church that you when pleasure is happening in their life and different things? It's an amazing thing. So once you get together and you know each other, you can rely on each other, then you can commit. You can commit. And that last aspect of these 5 components of really building a social capital, like they said, the corporate world, we're talking about building a healthy, family, church family, is the intimacy. The empathy can happen at a time like that. But so often, people just jump right in and they just start, giving somebody a hug, and they go, yeah, it felt really good. And that's what that lady did on that plane, wasn't it, Steve?
Absolutely. And what's interesting too is, like, when she left, he's just kind of like, that wasn't awkward at all.
Yep.
And it's amazing too. And it's just like, for those who are aware of like the game of tennis, if you think about it, there's a constant back and forth.
Yeah,
there should be, you should be able to watch the ball go back and forth. And it's interesting that anybody who's witnessed healthy conversation, if there was a spectator, you should be able to see somebody's talking, someone's actively listening.
Yeah, you want to know. You want to know. And I'll never forget. I had a particular minister that was ministered at our church, and I said, "Don't you want to hang around to see what people say about what you said?" And they said, "No." You don't even care if they understood what's going on, right? And that's the super chicken concept, where it's not about them. It's about, I just did my duty. And Paul talks about it. He said, if I do this job as a minister because I have to, I'm just discharging a duty. That's a super chicken. But he says, I don't want to lose my reward. I want to do it the right way with the right heart. And it's about being in a family. You get to see facial expressions. You get to see what's going on. You get to hear. The one thing they found out in their corporate study was that they gave everybody equal time to be able to share, what they have. Well, that's a biblical principle. These are not corporate principles. These are biblical principles. Paul said when the church is together, give people a chance to share.
Yeah.
Because each one will prophesy, another one will prophesy. They're sharing what's on their heart. And it just builds this whole dimensional understanding of a Rhema encounter with God, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting too, I remember a conversation that we had years ago, and, you asked me a powerful question of just like, tell me what it is that you're hearing.
Yeah.
And that is a powerful change, because so many people listen waiting for their opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
That's not listening. And
No.
it's just like, listening is not only done with your ears, but it's done with your eyes. And it's just like, you're focused on the person that's talking, because not only what they're saying is important, but the person who's talking is important.
Yeah.
Because you want to, it's just like, are you listening to me or are you hearing me?
Right.
Because it's interesting. It's just like, hearing me is healing me.
Yeah, it is.
Because when you realize when there's people that genuinely are hearing you and care about you, not just waiting for their turn to talk, it's interesting how much hearts will just begin to open up and people begin to connect with each other.
Yeah, man. Give a big shout out to Ears to Hear with Dean Easterwood, speaking about hearing. Actually hearing someone is so powerful. A lot of people just they want to be heard. And people who don't feel heard, they talk more than anybody else. And they have to understand that they are in the presence of somebody who's listening to them. But so hearing is so important. But also you think about interpersonal communication, if y'all taken that at the university, where people will only be able to understand what you're saying, not just because you understand what you're saying. They take in what you're saying based on their own personal experiences, their own vocabulary, their own, journeys and things that have happened in their life. Yeah. And so the only way you know how they took that in is you take the time and you say, what are you seeing? I'm seeing trees that are a little blurry right now, and so that's what Jesus asked, right? And the one man by the pool of Bethesda, do you want to be healed? He didn't just chunk him into the water. He had a conversation with us. And so sometimes you have to do that because, and also they can have the same experiences in their life, but they're going through a season in their life that is so chaotic that they can't think clearly, and they don't need to miss that revelation from God. So take your time helping them understand. And think about this too, when you put all this together, Jesus says, you didn't choose me, I chose you and appointed you to bear fruit, much fruit, and fruit that lasts, showing yourself to be my disciples, giving glory to the Father. So being fruitful and productive, is the key. And that happens. I mean, so many people are paralyzed because they're trying to do the super chicken thing. They're trying to supersize everything. They don't see anything of value in the one. They see value in the 500. And so I can't do 500, so the one don't count. I'll just go ahead and abort the one. They feel bad because they're just talking into one person's life. But if I'm that one person, I'm very encouraged that you're talking to me. Jesus would talk to the one. He stopped all the time to talk to the one. That's the wrong concept. That's the super chicken corporate model, enterprise model that America has done to the church, where people don't feel like they're successful unless they have 1,000 followers, on their Facebook or something, versus just speaking into one person's life and finding joy in that. I mean, you're just not talking at them. You want to know about them. What's going on in your life, what's happening, and you're praying for them. And it's just so cool. I think about one particular lady that she had been through very difficult times. I mean, her boyfriend that she was living with had beat her and left her. She quit her job for him. She was left at this house with her son, and everything was falling apart. I mean, he was the income source at that particular point because she quit her job and she believed everything he was saying. And so the son was like 11 years old. He goes into the bathroom and sees his mother curled up on the floor crying. But you know what? He knew that he could come to me and that I would take that time with him. So he came over and began to share with me, what's taking place, and that he needed some help with his mother because she was a single mother. And so we took some time to spend with her. We talked to her, said, what do you need? She says, I need a car. I need a job. I need a job that gets off at the time that my child gets off out of school, because I need to be there when he gets home because I'm the only parent. And I just said, okay, that's wonderful. Let's just pray and ask God right now. Let's just ask God for that right now. Just ask the Lord. This is how much God is into the one. And so we prayed and said, God, you would give her a car, give her a good job, give her the hours. This is what God did. God gave her a sports car, paid for her, gave her money to pay off all of her bills, gave her one of the best jobs in town, getting off at the hours that she needed to get off, and did it. Get this, Pat, get it. On her birthday.
All right.
On her birthday, God did this.
That's awesome.
And if you're just thinking about the thousands, you're missing that opportunity. And so later on, her son sticks a note in our door and says, listen, he says, you guys are like angels that God has put right by us. That you would speak into our life and that you would pray for us. And it was just amazing the things that have happened. That's what God's doing over and over and over. But that happens not in it can happen in a mass crowd, but you don't even know it happened. But,
right.
Just imagine doing that. So that's called fruit. That's called fruit. We're called to produce fruit. And remember, the whole study with this super chicken concept was about to study about, being more fruitful. When they took the model, the concept of what God says for his church, and they put it into a business environment, look how productive they became as she talks about it. We're talking about being more productive. Check it out.
When Alex Pentland suggested to one company that they synchronize coffee breaks so that people would have time to talk to each other, profits went up $15 million and employee satisfaction went up 10%. Not a bad return on social capital, which compounds even as you spend it.
Social capital compounds. That's an awesome word. Even as you spend it. When you develop things out of a relationship, they synchronize their coffee breaks so that people could spend more time together, and their profits went up by $15 million. Imagine if you had time to talk to the person that you've been sitting by for 10 years on the pew, looking forward in one direction. Now, thank God for the church. I'm not, wherever the church is, I love the church. But I'm talking about you being fruitful and you being productive. And God expects you to be productive, you to be fruitful. God says, them by their fruit. Mm-hmm. So it's important to understand that you don't live vicariously through someone else's fruit. God expects you to do what he says. And so the profits went up just by having that conversations over coffee, synchronizing the coffee breaks, by $15 million in 1 year. $15 million. And the employee satisfaction survey went up by 10%. Tell me what that says, Steve.
Relationship. That's all I hear over and over. And it's interesting. We're not called human doings. We're called human beings.
Yeah.
And it is amazing that when you actually take that time and you spend it with people, you will suddenly find that life has value. What you do has value versus I just have to, produce. When you find out that there's no gas in the tank left to do what you think you have to do, and you're burned out.
Yeah.
You're completely burned out. And it's amazing how relationship fuels us. That's how God created. That's a God idea. This is not a new concept. God is not surprised that this study brought the results that it did. This is God's design for you. You are designed to be relational. You're designed to have family. You're designed to be not alone. And it's just like, this is just a study in business. Imagine how much, quote unquote, more production your life can have just when you stop focusing on production and instead you focus on relationship with Jesus and with people.
I mean, how many people think that the relationship gets in the way of production?
Yeah, exactly.
That was their concept with the corporate world. They thought, do not let their coffee breaks happen. Don't let them talk. If so-and-so, we're going to miss all this production. They found out that corporations don't have ideas, that people have ideas, that God speaks to people. Get this. God died for people. He
Yeah.
didn't die for your building or for your organization or for your concepts or ideas. He loves people.
Mhm.
And how many people miss it until they don't have it? They don't have the relationship because they kept on not understanding the most important thing was to have the relationship. And the thing about relationships, they're so inconvenient. Oh
Well, that's
my
one of the
goodness,
sad
right?
things too. It's like we're talking about it now, so you don't
Yeah.
have to be in
Yeah.
that destructive reality where everything has blown up around you. And as you're talking, I'm reminded of one of my personal favorite books. If you have not heard of this, it's called Integrity, and it's written by a
Dr.
man named
Cloud, Henry Cloud.
Dr. Henry Cloud. But the subscript in that title, it's called "The Courage to Meet the Demands of Your Reality," and
Say that again. Say that again.
the courage to meet the demands of your reality.
That's good.
And in this book, he does a study because he wants to know, why are some businesses so successful and some are not?
And he was looking at the big crash that took place under George W. Bush's presidency. Remember the financial crash that took place?
Yeah.
He was looking at doing a corporate study of CEOs and share what he said.
Yeah. So he's trying to figure out, why are some executives successful and some are not? And throughout this book, he's basically coming back to the same reality that it's either integrity or lack of integrity. And in one of the particular conversations he's having, he talks about a person's wake. And we're talking about the fact of, you don't have to get to the place where
Spell
you're WAKE.
So you're talking about the thing that comes off the back of a boat when you're going through the water.
Right. And it's interesting that you can look at a wake of a boat and tell what kind of boat it is. You can tell what the
Same
boat
shape.
is doing. You can tell if it's a cruise ship. You can tell if it's an aircraft carrier. You can tell if it's a 20-foot, sports boat and turning. But what Dr. Henry Cloud talks about in his book is that every wake has basically two sides to it. You have your task side. I got to do. Don't get in my way. I got to do. Right.
Right.
Then you got your relationship side. And it's just like, you're focused on people. You might not get much done on this side of the wake, but you are focused on the people that are next to you.
And wakes don't lie.
Exactly.
It is what it is, right?
Is every ship has its own wake.
Right.
Well,
we have our own wakes.
That's it. The reality is that he talks about is the fact that every person has their own wake. It doesn't matter how you can say it is or what you think it might be. You can easily look behind you and say, are the relationships there? Or is the task there? It's just like, you might have gotten a lot done, but you just train wrecked a whole crowd of people. And he asks a question. He says, are people better off when they're in your wake? Or are they better off for avoiding your wake? And it's just like,
That's good.
I don't want to be somebody that just quote unquote gets a lot done and I steamroll people.
Right.
And
That's a super chicken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, Jesus is focused on relationship. At the same time, nobody produced more love than Jesus. And it's just like, they go together.
It's actually equally having those things in your life, because they did one study. Remember that the super producers, that basically super chickens at the office, and Henry Cloud's book was the biggest producer, but everybody in the office was going to quit. They said, you're either going to fire this guy or we're going to quit this company. So they were going to lose the majority of the common workers because they couldn't stand the character of the super chicken. But he's like, and their argument was, but look at his numbers. And they're saying, like, that's an integrity issue. If you're thinking that it's okay with God, that you're accomplishing something while you're killing people with your actions or your attitudes, you just don't think you're the super chicken. Yeah. And so we're looking at, God's called us to do what they're finding out in this study is to focus on relationship, and in the context of that relationship and the Great Commission, that you're going to be more productive. You're going to accomplish things. It'll be differently because it's not just you doing it. It may happen at different timings, but God's not looking at your schedule. He's looking at his schedule, days of 1,000 years and 1,000 years of a day. How was your heart during that? And I like what Mike Bickle says at International House of Prayer. He says, we're called to love our enemies. Yeah. And he says, let me tell you what an enemy is. Anybody who gets in the way of your schedule. Right? Yeah. And so sometimes we can be so focused on our schedule that all of a sudden somebody which is a somebody person, that you got to check yourself to make sure that you're showing them value, and that's why it's good. God set it up where we can meet with the church and have that church family at a certain time of the week, although you live together throughout the week, encountering each other and being there for each other and helping people get jobs and all that different kind of stuff, but hanging out in such a way at certain times of the week so you can really make room for people. And you're basically setting an appointment up and said, listen, I want us to be at the peak of being family in our relationship. And you could probably even eat together. What do y'all think? You probably could eat together, How many families don't even eat together anymore? I mean, they eat, but they don't eat together. They're all in front of their little streaming devices or something. Hey, it's good you're on this one. Anyway, but they don't sit around a table and eat together.
Yeah.
And Jesus did that. They called him a glutton because he did it. They called God, who created the food and gave them the air to breathe, and the vocal cords, to call him a glutton. But he just ate. He always ate because there's something so spiritual about eating together that Paul says, be careful who you do it with, in regards to not people in the world, but he's talking about people who are living like the world, but they're professing to have faith. So he said, don't even eat with. That's how spiritual it is. This is something about, think about when Jesus was risen from the grave. And he's walking on Emmaus Road. He was headed to go have a meal, right, with the disciples. And when they broke the bread, what happened when they broke the bread? You remember?
Yeah, that's when their eyes.
Your eyes open up when you actually sit. And he says, "You won't even see me again." Do you say, "Blessed is he who comes in my name"? Yeah. So when you are loving on someone and taking care of someone and breaking bread with someone who's a believer, you're doing that with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He says, I'm not unjust. I will not forget the love you have shown me and continue to show me as you help my people and continue to help. He says, whatever you do to the least of these of mine, you do it to me. He said, you can't even say that you love me if you don't love your brother, because how can you love me that you don't see and you hate your brother that you can see?
Yeah.
I think relationships are pretty important.
Well, you said it. I mean, like you said, you see people, that's a somebody. And it's interesting how, I've learned over the years, it's just like, it's often when you're in task mode or, you're on a schedule, that's often when Jesus shows up in your life. Those opportunities to love people when you don't have time.
No.
You want to come now of all times. But
no, it's good. It's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, give me a moment.
As you're saying that, it's just like the very moment. I think about that moment when Jesus is walking and a prominent leader, if you will, comes up to Jesus and he's talking about his daughter that's sick, and and she's about to die, and he's talking to Jesus. I need you to heal her. I need you to come heal her. And Jesus is walking right. And now there's a crowd pressed around Jesus, and this man is like, pushing Jesus on, like, hey, traffic, we got to go, we got to get, we're running out of time. And Jesus says, somebody just touched me. Yeah. And there's a crowd literally pressing him. And it's just like, imagine like walking through somewhere that you really can't even take a full step. Right. And his disciples look at Jesus and they're like, what do you mean somebody touched you? We're all touching you. He says, no. I felt power leave me. And he looks down and he sees a woman who just happened to touch the hem of his garment. He basically stops the whole situation, brings attention to this lady. And she had a thought where she says, if I can just touch the hem of his garment. And she had a medical condition that she was bleeding. 12 years. And that she had just poured everything into her life. And it's interesting that when people around Jesus were pushing him on a timeline, he took the time to stop and see the one. And we still talk about that to this day. And it's just like,
it pulled something out of God. She understood that she tapped into literally what God wants. He wants somebody to have a relationship with him.
And what is so powerful though, is like, you see these moments and sometimes we forget that it's just like, we think God is so, magnificent and, magnanimous is the word I once heard. And it's just like, he sees you. Yeah. He sees you so much that he orchestrated and changed our lives brought us together in this very moment, that you're watching this right now. And it's just like, God sees you.
Yeah.
You're not
important.
an accident. Yeah. You have
You are
value.
somebody.
He loves you. And it's just like, how awesome is that to think about that reality?
I think about this. I know we got to close or come into a close here, and make sure we're going to pick this up our next Tuesday. This is so encouraging. We got so much more to share about this. And don't forget, you can go to greglancaster.org or go to vineseminars.org. We're going to be talking about, that's actually where we walk out and help you learn how to be the church instead of just going to it, and how to build those kind of relationships. But no, we're coming to a close. I think about what you're talking about, Steve. I think about Granger Smith. Granger Smith, he's a country artist that sings country music, had a tragic loss in his life, and they lost their son at an early age. But guess what? He just spoke at a church, and he shared his testimony. And what you're talking about, Granger got it. Granger got it. This is Granger Smith sharing his testimony, at a church just this last week. You got to hear this. We're going to close it out with Granger Smith sharing his testimony. Check this out.
The disciple asked Jesus, Lord, how is it that you will manifest yourself to us, but not to the world? And Jesus answered him, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word. And my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. And then there was a pause with the sermon, and the pastor says, that's not unconditional love. That is profoundly conditional. And there was something about that right then. I can't explain totally what happened, but my eyes were open. It's like Amazing Grace. Once I was blind and now I see. The floodgates opened for me. And I understand that the gospel can trigger this. I fell into this spontaneous, unrehearsed, unprompted prayer. Right then, right there behind the steering wheel, in the car, tears streaming down my cheeks. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, Father, save me. I want to seek you. I want to follow you. I want to learn you. I want to pursue you. I want to crave you. I want to desire you. Make me hunger for you. Make me thirst for you. Make me ache for you. Take my life. Do as you please. I'm your servant. I'm your sheep. I'm your child. Father, I'm yours. Now later, I learned what happened. I was reborn.
What? Oh my goodness. That is so awesome. Listen, that's your chance. That is your chance to be able to do the very same thing that Granger just did. To be able to make that decision. He fought with it and fought with it and he fought with it. He's trying like, what's going on? And he's like, I get it. This is definitely, I need to make a decision for God. If that's you right now, I want you to pray with me, just like Granger just prayed. You say, Jesus, I want you to be the Lord of my life. I want to be born again. It's very simple. Jesus paid the price. He paid the expense for us to be able to do this. God sent his son, Jesus, to die for us, pay the price for us, to pay the price for our sins. And he rose him from the dead on the third day so that we can be forgiven and be in the family of God. Be in the family of God. That's what we're talking about. If that's you, I want you to pray with me right now and mean it. Just say, Jesus, just like Granger just did. Jesus, I want you to be the Lord of my life. I want to be yours. I want to give you everything. I want to commit the way Granger committed. I want to commit the way Greg committed. I want to give you everything. I want to be in your family. I want to be with you. Forgive me. Cleanse me. Wash me. Make me new, Jesus. I want you to be the Lord of my life. Hallelujah. If you pray that and you meant that, welcome to the family of God. Is that awesome? You did the same thing that Granger did, and myself and Steve and Pat and Chris and all. Well, listen, we have some information for you on the screen. You can contact us. Let us know your decision. We're so excited about it. Welcome to the family of God. And make sure you catch part 3 of the Super Chicken next Tuesday. God bless.